Let me try that again. Unmute myself first. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's also pre-recorded edition of the Designer's Den. It has been a busy month, thus all the pre-recording. So, sorry that we're not here for you live. I might be live in chat. You'll know if I am because you'll see me typing. So, uh, though. But with that busy month, I have several exciting guests on, including my guest for today, Steve Fidler, who has done a lot of stuff. Um, well, it's true. I was looking at your product page, and it's just like a lot. But for anyone who doesn't know Steve, I'm going to let him give himself a little bit of an introduction because guests always do that better than I do.
I'm Steve Fidler. I'm sole owner, proprietor of Four Dice Press, which is just me. And we make D&D 5th edition content. We being me. And we made the Warden class, the Prism class, the Amaranth's Almanac line. We're one part of the team that made Mythic Encounters, Mythic Eberron, and a bunch of other little things here and there. And we do layout services as Vorpal Designs, which is a big thing these days.
Yes, well done layout cannot really be overvalued because it just makes your product look more professional. Brings a lot to it. So I imagine you're really busy with that.
Yeah, that one's what's keeping me busy now.
Yeah, but it's good to have a little bit of job security there, knowing that everything nowadays is, I don't know, aiming for a professional look. Yeah, so you've been producing content for 5th edition pretty much since early in 5th edition.
Yeah.
And you've been doing the DM's Guild stuff pretty much since the beginning. Back in there at the beginning with MT and and JB Superi and Jeff. Don't forget Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff.
Jeff says he's been there since the dinosaurs. But yeah. So you and the mouse in your pocket, Vorpal dice, the Wii, that's Wii, have had a lot of success. I would, argue. I don't know. It depends. It's a very subjective measure, but I would say, because you've got numerous bestsellers and everything. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But first, I want to talk a little bit more about the Warden class that you mentioned, because it was super cool. And I'm always a fan of a new and exciting way to play the game, which is what all these new subclasses and classes bring to it. Love when someone sends me something new like that. I'm going to combine it, of course, now with some. There were no fox folk in the new Unearthed Arcana.
We can fix that.
Yeah.
We could do fox folk.
Yeah, I know. We're gonna do some kitsune.
We did Kurspa, Mia and Nathaniel Rue. And so squirrel folk, now fox folk, that's not too far.
No, just a slightly different bushy tail shape.
Yeah.
But the Warden class, it's kind of like in tune with nature, but also a little bit more of that warrior type thing. So what really was the, I guess impetus to make you design the Warden class? What was the inspiration behind it?
So the original Warden class started for my own homebrew campaign setting, which doesn't have vast tracts of land to range. So rangers are sort of not really a thing in my setting. Ecosystems are very small and tight, although packed with tons of energy. So the Warden was spawned from that. It was originally called the Sourcebound, which was a horrifically specific name.
Yeah.
And then I started shopping it around on Reddit back in 2015, 2016, sometime around then. And got some feedback, it's developed a little bit further, and then it's eventually evolved into the Warden, which is the kind of unlike a druid and a fighter becoming a ranger, it's more like a sorcerer and a fighter, in that you're like born of the elements and they're part of you, and it all comes from within.
Okay. So that is kind of more of a. I'm trying to think of the name of the video game. I'm really bad at thinking of the name of things. Um, that has the wardens.
Dragon Age,
Yes.
the Grey Wardens.
Yes, Dragon Age and the Grey Wardens, where they have kind of like that innate connection with the land, except the Grey Wardens aren't really necessarily as innately magical. Um, but that's kind of like what I think of when I think of like a warden or whatever, um, or also like uh, I don't know, I'm bad at this. Oh, the Black Knights. Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah, Game of Thrones. So, their sole duty is like they've got that connection with the land, although not necessarily them so much because a lot of those are just prisoners that didn't want to be in jail. Um, but they have that historic, deep connection with that land there. Um, so, okay, so it came from your homebrew game and then kind of evolved into this. And it kind of feels that little niche um, for a lot of people who don't really like the Ranger. uh, you know,
I like to I like to think it fills the niche for people that want to play a sorcerer and be upfront. But yeah, it also helps with rangers, that people that don't feel fully satisfied with the ranger.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of workarounds for not solid that. But the sorcerer angle, I actually like that too because sorcerer is probably one of my favorite classes because it's so versatile. Um, I mean, much like the wizard, but like, who wants to be a stuffy old wizard? Uh,
Yeah.
they have to go to school and everything. Uh, nobody wants to do that. So, being able to take that uh, variety of like sorcery and to kind of refine it and bring it into this like concept of someone who is more druidic um, is kind of neat in my opinion. I definitely have a couple of characters that I think would um, lean more towards this warden like thing if that had been an option. Um, because they love to, for better or worse, charge into things when their territory, their land, their people are in danger. That often gets me killed. Uh, I am not made for battle. I don't realize that, but I am not. So yeah. But aside from the warden class, you have made a significant number of other uh,
Yep.
classes.
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of like a thing you like to do. More so,
Yeah,
more so than adventure writing, definitely.
definitely. Adventure writing is fun, and it's a really I love telling stories, but I'm not as good at the structure,
Mm-hmm.
for the purpose of publishing an adventure. I'm perfectly good at writing one that I can play at my table with my friends, but when someone wants to then read it and run it themselves, I start to get a bit lost in how to give that information to them.
It is definitely a challenge. I don't know. Like I do it, but I still don't know if I'm any good at it.
Yeah,
You just,
adventure writing's it's interesting. I was talking to someone about this recently, where if you're mechanically minded person like I am, where you start building classes, subclasses, magic items, spells, I find it hard to go to adventure writing because it's it's not as structured. And then I also find, however, the people that go from adventure writing to now making classes and subclasses, and that tend to be a lot more imaginative when they create their products
Mm-hmm.
or their items and contributions, what have you. They may not have the same level of polish and
Might not be as
finishing touches.
balanced, but they have a lot of.
And I don't like that word.
I said it with a little bit of derision.
Yeah.
But they have a lot of flair. You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
I definitely do note that from people who tend toward more adventure writing and then put out a player supplement, that it's more like there's a lot of backstory for their items. There's a lot of lore behind their subclass, and it's like I can tell you had a story for this class, and then you're like, I'm gonna try to put numbers with it. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Um, I, though, I don't know that I necessarily agree that there's not a structure to adventure writing.
I'm sure there's a structure. It's just it's there's more style involved. Like you get like I'm trying to think of two adventure writers off the top of my head, but like Anthony Joyce, for example, likes to write short, concise adventures with everything you need right there. And it's just nice and tight and easy to run. But then some adventures, I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, tend to be full of exposition and flourish and lore. And sometimes it's hard to find the actual adventure inside.
Mm-hmm.
They're both equally good. They both equally have playable content, but it's just a very different style. And then there's everything in between, and then everything outside the box.
So, like with a lot of lore, the first thing that comes to mind to me is Window to the Past, because it had like this whole section in the middle by Alan Patrick, with like books where you could learn about Hazaron and like all of these other like Netherese things, and like it was literally like 8 pages of that. But there was also like a great adventure in there. So yeah, definitely see that there are varying takes on it, and Anthony is particularly good at being concise sometimes. I remember, I think it was MT that runs the 1 page contest that Anthony won, and there was a lot on that page. Whew.
Yeah.
But it did. It gave you everything that you needed. So, but I think I don't know. I don't know if there's necessarily a better way, more words, less words, because there are, again, the varying styles of DMs. So, your, I don't know, worry about it not being right might be kind of irrelevant because there's DMs who would need the style that you would write it in. So,
And I wrote an encounter slash adventure for Joe Rasso's Dunwood's
mm-hmm,
book, which is a follow up to the Great Dale campaign guide. Um, and it ran. It was supposed to be an encounter. It ran a little long. It ended up becoming more like an adventure. Um, and I think it's pretty good. I didn't hear any complaints upon submission, and I haven't heard anyone singing its praises, but at the same time, I think it works very well, and I
yeah,
think people could use it.
I love encounters because it really does get rid of a lot of the pesky, like, formatting and like stuff that you have to do for an entire adventure, because you really just need to present this one core situation, and here's the deal, here's the important details, here's the character and their motivations. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna knock everything off my desk. um so encounters are kind of one of my favored formats, and I don't know, I would say you're fond of encounters as well.
Yeah.
Mythic encounters.
Yeah. Mythic encounters, which are nothing like an actual encounter.
No, not particularly.
Yeah. It was funny when we released that. I got a couple messages from people because it came out in tandem with Mythic Odysseys with Theros, thinking that it was like the Adepts products where it was, Waterdeep encounters or encounters in Ravenloft or I don't know if that's an actual product, but just thinking of names.
No, we
But
hadn't started that then.
yeah, so I got a lot of messages saying this isn't like the encounters product I thought I was buying. What's going on here? And I'm like, oh, sorry.
The naming convention is a little confusing, uh, but you know, no, the accompanying Theros one was, of course, Encounters in Theros.
Mhm.
Sorry to everyone who got confused, but also, you know, you got some sales.
Yeah, and a great product.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and a great product. Mythic Encounters, it really is. And all of your mythic series, your mythic, the Bullywug one, the Eberron one, they've all done very well, and you kind of hit the right notes there that people are looking for, and you've kind of established, like, now that people know what it is, what they can expect when they see one of those. Um, which the other thing that you do a lot of that people pretty much know what to expect at this point in time is the Amaroon's Almanac, and you have, let's see, 17 of them?
8 volumes of the main series, and then I guess 9 adventures that correspond to them.
Yeah, a lot.
Yep.
And that's been a project you've been working on for, oh
Uh,
gosh, a couple
it was a it
years.
it was a full calendar year from the first book release to the eighth, which was the last in the main series. Um, but then we were working on it a couple months before that, so I'd say about 15 months.
Yeah, and that was an ambitious undertaking, getting all of the various realms and then adding in 9 adventures.
Mhm.
Like, yeah. What made you want to take on such an ambitious project with such a, I guess, well-known, uh, Amaroon's Almanac is a very well-known thing in the realms. Want to take up that, I guess, mantle?
Yeah, it's funny. It didn't start that way, like all things. We I had the idea of doing spells with an additional component called environment,
Mm-hmm.
where you know sandstorm wouldn't just be conjuring a sandstorm; it would be literally pulling up all the sand around you, so you'd only be able to use it in a sandy desert. Um, or graspy trees, which you can use in a forest, and all the trees come to life and start grabbing people and pulling them up into the boughs of the trees, um, which I thought was a compelling idea, but probably wasn't enough for a whole book on its own.
Right.
So we I started to map out and outline the idea of what can we add to that. Well, you know, if we're going to do it regionally, like each environment, forests, the swamps, mountains, then what else is environmental? Well, beasts, animals,
Mm-hmm.
monsters, locations, like there's well-known desert areas,
The
and like, yeah, Kalimshan and
the various
Anarok, and
cultures thereof. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and then magic items because we want to fill up a couple pages, and we just started building up and building up, and that's when I realized I needed to bring more people onto the team. So I grabbed every person that I knew who was an expert in what they do. Like Born to Do Stuff is probably one of the best magic item creators that for fifth edition that exists. Like I would say he's probably the absolute best at it. Um, Ashley May doing the writing for the locations, which was lucky. We kind of fell into that, and she just took that and ran with it and
And
made
she's
that what it was.
fabulous at that.
Yeah,
She really
just
brings, like, locations to life.
yeah, her prose writing is just fantastic. And then we had Trevor Armstrong writing spells, and then we brought Brian Holmes in a little bit later, and Israel Maria doing the Ranger subclass because he knows Rangers. He can make Rangers fun. and doing the flora as well. And then yeah, we just filled it out and filled out the team. And I'm sure I'm missing a couple people. Oh yeah, right. Ed Greenwood. Yeah. Writing flora and helping out with lore and helping us make the map look right. And yeah, just we just brought in all these people and set a really ambitious release schedule and managed to stick to it.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely ambitious. And I mean, I know you've already covered the project management side of that with Jeff. But not to discount that, like, being lead on a project like that, it was in and of itself quite the job. And that's not something that every creator out there is, cut out for. Um, if, if that we were, that would be, we would have so many more projects ongoing. That might not be a good thing.
at least it's good to have a couple project management experts just to get everybody else working,
Yeah,
keep everybody else on track.
somebody's got to keep track of the timetables and crack the whip.
Yeah, well, sometimes.
Proverbial. Yeah, sometimes you get very lenient. Sometimes you feel bad telling people that they're late, and it's hard. It's hard being a project manager.
Yeah,
Um,
especially in 2020, that was a hard year to put
to
out 8 books.
yeah, because you especially don't want to be like, well, you're behind, because you're like, well, the world's fucked right now, so
Yeah.
we're all behind. But also, you're behind. Can you not be? Yeah. Well, so what? I mean, obviously, it's just gonna be you love D&D, but what made you want to get started on doing all of this, fifth edition content?
There isn't a game I've ever played that I didn't do some sort of homebrew, make my own content for. Even when I was playing World of Warcraft, I would hand write out like a whole new custom class idea and submit it to Blizzard, or new quests, or like a new PvP mode kind of thing. Um, you know, uh, when I was a kid, like young, playing Super Nintendo RPGs, like I had graph paper books full of little drawings and inventory menus and listing every item that you can get in the RPG and all the monster stats. And, I could never actually make the game, but I had it all there. It was just world building from a game design perspective, really.
Yeah, that is super interesting. I never did that with like Mario or anything like that. I didn't get that into it with WoW either. I submitted an idea for Transmogrify because, because I really wanted my armor to look like a certain thing, and it absolutely was not an option. And apparently, they didn't think it was very cool because it never happened. I was sad. Um, we needed more flowers. There was a distinct lack of flowers. But yeah, no, that totally makes sense. You've always been kind of gamifying everything, expanding upon the world. So you got into fifth edition, you loved it, and you're like, you start doing what you do. Uh, so when you were doing that for other games, like you said, you were never gonna make the game for Mario. But when did you decide that, like, you wanted to be a publisher, do the whole Vorpal Dice Press thing?
Well, Vorpal Dice Press was me legitimizing what I was doing, because for a long time, uh, somewhat as my dark ages, I was posting to the subreddit Unearthed Arcana, and I was taking art I found on the internet, making beautiful projects, and you know, um, I realized at one point that if I really wanted to keep doing that, it would be nice to use art legally, so be able to have some money to be able to pay artists to do that, and b, like, fund my time. It's not cheap. right?
Right. No, time
Yeah,
is precious. Yeah.
yeah. So I said, okay. One day I took down everything I had, anything that was good that people liked. I re-uploaded it without art. I stripped all the art out, which people hated. Um, and then I got to work on publishing some things. Like I think the first thing, so I published to DM's Guild in 2016, about 6 or 7 days after DM's Guild opened,
Mm-hmm.
and then never published anything again there for a very long time. For no reason other than um, I was spending most of my time making stuff with art I didn't have licenses to, so I didn't think it would be a good idea to
No,
publish there.
no,
No,
tis a bad idea. Don't do that.
yeah. Um, but then when I decided to legitimize, I made the Kraken, released the
Mm-hmm.
Kraken was the name of the document, which I launched on the weekend of D&D Live 2019. So nobody who was buying things was around because they were all watching that and hearing about Descent into Avernus. And yet somehow it went Electrum, or sorry, Silver in 72 hours. And made all my money back that I invested on the cover, and boom. And I was like, okay, I've got money in the pocket. I can start spending money on making more and more. So I made the Prism class next, and then I made a couple other small supplements, and then got on a couple teams, and step by step by step, off it goes.
That's true. According to DM's Guild, you actually uploaded an Eberron thing first.
Oh yeah, the Warforged revised. That was when I used to have a bad habit of when Wizards of the Coast had released Unearthed Arcana, picking it apart and redesigning it and saying my version was better. Um,
Your version is different.
I said it was better. I should have said it was different. Um, and I don't do that anymore. But that was what that was. That was the version of the Warforged that had the Scout and the Juggernaut um, sub races.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I fixed up the AC calculation and made the subclass sub races a little more interesting and put that up there. And I was like, let's see what happens with this. And I think I put it up as pay what you want. I made like $5 off of it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But you've sold at least 50 copies of it.
oh yeah, the fantasy ground conversion, which the guy who did it, Rob Toohey, who doesn't normally do pay what you want titles, just said, oh, I'll do it for you and I'll put it up as pay what you want as well. So it's a pay what you want fantasy grounds conversion. The fantasy ground conversion is actually Copper bestseller as well, which I thought was crazy. Like, I was just so surprised seeing that.
Well, Fantasy Ground stuff is very popular because well, there's a dedicated audience for it, and it's work to do the conversion. So, to have something ready made makes it, I don't know, I guess just very appealing. So they can just drop it into their games, and they don't get as many, I guess, non-standard options converted. You get a lot of like the official content and the organized play stuff, but like it's very hit or miss whether other stuff gets converted. Yeah, and then like you said, once you did start publishing into you know release the Kraken, right into your Prism stuff, into all of the other, you really kind of dove into it right into the deep end. And you have up now 48 items on the DM skill, which is a pretty substantial number for um, having only really started posting in mid 2019. Actually, that is a very impressive number for only having like, you know, what are we at? Like a year and 3 quarters now. Um,
um, yeah, yeah, you're in 3 quarters, almost to the day.
yeah. Uh, so I mean 5/17. So today is
Yeah.
17th. So I mean, Yeah. So is this what you do? Well, you don't do this full time, but
Yeah.
how much time would you say you devote to this?
More than I should. I've got a house and a full time job and two lovely twin daughters, and who are almost four now, so they take up a lot of my time.
Right.
Um, but this is my only hobby, other than playing Twilight Imperium with my board game buddies once or twice a week, kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, this is really it for me. So this is like the hobby. I don't play too many video games anymore, um, and so I would say conservatively 20 hours a week. Yeah, plus or minus a bit. Especially since I've been working from home, because you get a couple of those extra hours, lunch hour and the half hour before work and what have you,
Does
to
that
slip in there.
include the Twitter promo time?
No, no, never does. No. That's all done, in between breaks and oh, honey, I gotta get something from the car. Promote, promote, promote. Yeah,
We can't include our Twitter time or the hours spent spikes.
yeah. Or chatting on Discord, or
No, that just happens in our downtime.
yeah. That's downtime. That's fun. We like that.
Yeah, everyone loves the discourse.
Yeah, the disc and the horse.
Um, okay, so you've just finished up Amaroons, and you've got your pretty popular Squirrel Folk out now.
Yeah.
What are you looking to do next? Actually, your Squirrel Folk is apparently your most popular thing that you've released ever. It's at the top of the list.
Yeah, it did really well.
It's
That
beautiful.
was a fun project. Sorry, I'm just gonna wax a little bit here, but
No, do.
I saw an Ed tweet about these Kurspa, and I was like, that can't be right. That I've never heard of them in Forgotten Realms before, but there they are. And I said, okay, I'm gonna make this. And Nate, I worked with him on the Crofa, which are uh, mechanic pig aeronaut mechanic pig folk.
Like
Um,
warthogs is what I. Yeah.
yeah, and they're like Eberoni and do like flying cities and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he had done the Lutrinian and the Melantite, Badger and Otterfolk. And so I said, I want to work on this. He did the art for all of those, so I knew he'd be able to do the art, and he was super interested in doing the art for the Kurspa. And so I just started writing, and he started doing art, and it was the most fun I've had writing anything in the last couple months. Like I just loved it. I loved every bit of it. It was just so much fun to write.
Well, you can just when you're doing a like an anthropomorphic character, you can just kind of get silly with it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sorry,
I
go
don't
on.
know what it is just about like tiny woodland creatures that just bring such joy to the world.
Yeah,
I love
like
tiny.
Humblewood's I think it's fifth edition, and it's all like red wall, small animals, folk, and what have you. And I just love the art in those books.
I just love tiny woodland creatures.
Uh, wow. Um, and yeah, it was interesting too, because while we were writing it, I was trying to lean away from them being squirrels and really just try to give them their own culture
Mm-hmm.
and their own backstory. And I created a character that's like deep into like Forgotten Realms lore and did all this stuff. But then they're still all about acorns and climbing trees and moving around quickly. And the two subclasses, the tiny but mighty rogue and the Path of the Pest barbarian, that scurry around in your pants and up your shirt. And I leaned into it as much as I could while also trying to be like a real thing, like a real product, like nothing too jokey,
Right.
but
Right.
still super jokey.
I mean, good and lighthearted. Having something lighthearted is, you know, it's good to kind of mix it up. You don't want everything to be all uh doom and gloom. We have enough of that with like the official settings, especially right now.
Mm.
And I think especially with the art, you've managed to definitely with this particular product strike that balance between humor and seriousness. I
Mm.
particularly like the cover art, which I have up right now. I don't know what he's actually reaching for through the portal, but I have to believe it's like the most perfect acorn in the world. Kind of like the acorn that the squirrel from Ice Age in the little shorts. If he can just reach it, but fate is against him. Uh
I like to think, squirrels bury their nuts in winter.
yes.
Uh, Having magic, this squirrel hides them in a demi-plane and just pulls them out when he wants them.
But would they stay fresh?
Hmm? Yeah, depends on the demi-plane.
Yeah.
Demi-plane of refrigeration.
Yeah. You could just, put them into a bag of holding and that's an airless. I feel like that would be okay. I don't know. I don't really know the best way to store acorns. I've never really thought about it.
Underground, I guess.
Yeah.
You gotta assume the squirrels know what they're doing.
Yeah. Probably. They're professionals.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are your plans for your next project? You're going to take on another ambitious one like Amarones, or you're going to do some projects from Ed Greenwood shitpost?
I'll keep an eye out for more of those. I honestly like I'm doing a lot of layout work right now. I'm
Yeah.
doing the players primer series with Stephen Pankotai. I'm doing a Chesson so, regional source book with Christian Zed. I'm doing another mythic book that I'm not writing for, but I'm doing layout for with Brian Holmes. And there's a couple other ones that I'm working on. And I'm doing a bit of consulting work with balancing and editing and playtesting.
Right.
I'd love to be doing some big kick-ass Kickstarter, but just, offers aren't coming in like I thought they would this year, which is fine. Which is fine. I can wait. Um, but and then I'm working on my Hierophant class, which is a rune caster.
Okay.
It's a full caster. They're kind of wizardy, druidy, all about language and
Mhm.
glyphs, and their subclasses are the culture that the glyphs come from, like the the Fey folk customs, which in the past it's meant to be ambiguous. It's not meant to be like specific, but like in the past, uh, Fey type creatures and cultures would use like the power of like leaves and bark and what have you. That's where they put their runes.
Yes.
So, and then there's like an infernal one, which is like carved in flesh and blood. And then like dwarves and what have you. So it that one's interesting. I've got another idea for a class coming. And then I'm working on slowly my own setting guide for that setting that the
Mhm.
warden came from. Which I was just posting a thread on Twitter about the geography, because the land masses are super weird because there's no oceans, and everything's up on spires on top of a sea of clouds, and it's all airships and dragon riding and what have you.
So
Um,
the normal rules of physics don't really apply to the land
they do
masses.
sort of. They grow from the surface, but no one's seen the surface because they can't get through the storms. And
Okay,
then they
so we
grow
had
into these sort of like
some tectonic activity going on, pushing the land masses together.
crystals. Veins of
Oh.
crystal come out of the planet. What the crystal is not specific yet, but they're semi-magnetic, and they pull dust and sediment out that's whipping around on the planet's surface, and they grow up and up and up and up, and then they get to the top and come out over the storm. but then there's no sediment above the storm, so they just start to even out over the top. Um,
That is
and the
very neat.
storm and the storm creates all sorts of unique properties and you know
I love
like
interesting crystals. That was a big. It was a series Anne McCaffrey did, the Crystal Singer and stuff, where I loved all the weird stuff that you can do with like crystals. They have properties. Who knows what they are? Who knows what they do to a planet or a person's mind or whatever? There's so many possibilities with something like that. So I'm excited to see that.
yeah, the prevailing theory is among the Beshti, which are sort of like an animal folk hybrid race, is that it's the planet. They assume that the planet's flat because they can't get around it. They're not at that part in their technology yet. Is that a god or a titan fell and died and was like destroyed, and the crystal is its blood, and it's trying to reform in like its body, but it can't because once it gets to a certain point, there's not enough of it left. So it just starts to fall apart once it gets to a certain point. So they're quite terrified of the ground. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, but
The,
there's going to be all sorts of theories, and it's going to be a bit like Eberron. I'm never going to really tell you what it actually is because you know,
nobody
like
knows what nobody knows what the morning is. It just is.
yeah. Well, Keith Baker probably knows, but he's not going to tell you.
I don't know that he does. I think
Hmm.
I feel like we talked about that. I don't know.
Oh,
I can't remember. It's been a while.
I'm sure he's got his idea at least.
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably. But you got to be mysterious. The secret stays in the hat.
yeah. Everything in that.
Everything in the hat.
Acorns.
Just little acorns of uh plot seeds. Yeah. Okay. Well, aside from looking for some, I guess, hot Kickstarters, you've got a lot going on. So, uh, I don't know. Even though not as visible on these projects, still fairly active and fairly busy. Are you planning to do anything for either of the announced releases, Candlekeep or Van Richten's?
I'm doing layout for a project on Van Richten's.
Oh,
Um,
there's a lot
I
of
don't
opportunity there for some of your cutesy animal stuff
in
on some of the planes.
Ravenloft.
Yeah.
I'd have to see because they're introducing so many new domains of dread. Like there could be a lot, but I don't know yet because I haven't seen the book.
Oh, there's lots.
Yeah, but I don't know a lot about Ravenloft. It's not my favorite setting. I'm not a gothic horror type person.
I I hate it.
I would have said for quite a while I was a goth. I was very much engrossed in that subculture when I was much younger.
Were you a
Yet
were, were you a goth or were you a scene kid? There's an important distinction.
I would like to think I was a goth because I didn't like seeing kids. No.
So you're saying so
But I don't know. It wasn't a huge portion of my life, but I don't like horror a whole lot.
I don't.
You
I
know,
I
I
can't.
I was kind of turned off on Icewind Dale at first because I was like, horror, but then I realized I
It
that
doesn't
wasn't
have to
as
be.
yeah, it wasn't as overt. It wasn't like madness rules and gritty realism, and
Not
it
like
was
yeah, well, there is some gritty realism, but it's not like, the Call of Cthulhu stuff, like you think of a horror game.
yeah, yeah.
Um
So that was good. I was glad because I had to buy that product to rate Cult of the Shattered Peak, which was a lot of work.
Cult of the
Yeah.
yes. Anything with like cults somehow always ends up being a lot of work because you have to make sure that you have a compelling reason for your cult and that they fit in and that people give a shit about them. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I've always, yeah, found it very difficult.
Yeah.
Plus, also, anytime you have a cult, there's inherently some sort of mystery. Like, why is there a cult? What are they up to? And mysteries are difficult.
Yes.
If you're an aspiring writer and you want to write something, your first thing should probably not be a mystery.
Yeah. I tend to tell people if you're doing a story, uh, it's never a bad thing to start with like a very basic hero's journey story. Just, adventure, clear goal, meet a mentor, rising arc, all that stuff. It's just it tends to be a really good way to get ideas down and the practice of actually putting your thoughts on paper.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if you have an idea, write the idea that you want to write. But if you don't have an idea and you just want to practice, a basic hero's journey is fine.
Yeah, basic hero's journey, or you've got your adventuring guild, and there's these things posted on the bulletin board. Something simple like that is always a great place to start, and that tends to actually be kind of where I start when I'm doing games for new players. Like, I'll get families who've never played before, and they all want to learn together, and we'll just, you know, we found ourselves at the adventuring guild in Waterdeep or Neverwinter or, God forbid, Luskin. One of them ones, they were really into pirates with their backstory, so I started as the adventuring guild in Luskin, and then things went sideways real
Yep.
fast. We did one easy quest, and then they're like, so what about these ne'er-do-well pirates? Oh, it's like, yeah. They're like, can we join them? Maybe? To what end?
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Risk life and limb, go out on the sea, and get attacked by some frost giants. Whatever. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's cool.
Krakens, whatever.
Yeah, Kraken, and then, a nice aboleth and some underwater fighting where everyone is a ranged shooter.
Bow and arrow, no so good underwater.
Positively the worst. No, that's not true. Hand crossbow. Absolute worst.
Yeah. But the best is a net
Yes.
because it's got a 5 foot range or 10 foot or whatever. It's always a disadvantage, but if you drop it, it's got infinite range.
Mm-hmm.
And since in the basic rules it drops immediately, you can literally just drop tons of nets over the city of Askarl and just get everybody at once.
That's got to be the plot line of some movie somewhere. Just dropping a bunch of nets on an underwater city.
Terrible for the environment, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah.
Water.
If it wasn't the plot of Waterworld, I don't know what movie it would be. And that was just Mad Max on water.
It's true. Oh.
No, that was actually I work in film for my day job, and that was the pitch for that movie.
Mad Max on water?
Yeah, Mad Max was really good. We want to do Mad Max on water. And it was like the most horrific production ever because they actually built a set like 3 hours off the coast of Hawaii and it sank like twice and exploded once. And yeah, it was so stupid.
I'm sure the idea was good in someone's mind, and much like, content creation, sometimes it just doesn't work well on paper. Or,
Yeah.
on the ocean, as it were. Uh, I I don't know that I would have wanted to be part of that production at all.
No.
Imagine a bunch of barges, terrible conditions. Yep.
Jet skis though.
Blistering sun.
Mm.
Minimal options for snacks. This is the real problem right here. I understand.
Oh yeah. You gotta bring your own snacks.
Yeah, always. Always have pocketfuls of snacks. Well, digress. But anyways, we are nearing the end of our hour. So is there anything in closing that you want to share with the viewers or um, any words of wisdom about becoming a content creator, being successful, joining projects, project managing, and all that before you share your social medias, which you're totally not
So
on all the time?
that's a lot of stuff. I honestly, best word of wisdom is if you want to get into adventure writing, join the RPG Writers Workshop or Storytelling Collective. It's called now, the one run by Scribe Mind and Ashley Warren.
Yes.
I did one of the courses there. I think they're restructuring, so I don't know if it's still part of it, but um, great environment, great community, tons of people to learn from. They're constantly expanding their course load. They're getting into project management, they're getting into contracts, they're getting into marketing, all these things that are
Valuable skills.
and significant barriers of entry too. Um, I know a couple people just recently that were on a project that tanked because of an issue with the lead, and they don't know what's going on with their work. It's like we
And
submitted stuff. Can we take it? Can we use it? Can we republish it? And they have no idea, so their work is just in limbo. So it's a skill as a creator, whether you're going to run a publishing and do project management, or if you're just going to be part of projects. Something a lot of people don't
mhm.
know about, because people enter it thinking this is an amateur community, and it is, until money starts changing hands. Then it's not. Now you're a professional,
Mhm.
and it can still be fun, but you got to protect yourself.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yourself and your intellectual property.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people out in these communities that are ne'er do well and can take advantage of people. So I highly recommend people join a community where people are helpful and willing to provide good advice. And the RPG Writers Workshop community is one of the best for that. And not even if you're not writing adventures, there's still good people there with a lot of good feedback
And they
and
have
what have
some
you.
good stuff for writing non-adventures, for writing supplements too. They had some good classes for like creating magic items and treasure and how to fill a dungeon,
Mm-hmm.
which all of that could be a very exciting supplement. How to keep things mixed up because you don't want it to be a generic dungeon number 793.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the other advice is just create stuff,
Yes.
and work on the stuff you want to work on. Don't join projects that you're not interested in, because you're not going to put your best foot forward, and it'll reflect poorly on you. It can reflect poorly on you. But more importantly, it's more fun to work on the stuff you want to work on.
Yes.
Yeah.
That advice right there cannot be repeated enough. Like if you're not having fun, like don't do it
Mm-hmm.
because it really becomes like soul sucking then, and it's always a tragedy when like your passion became your job and then you start to hate it and then you no longer love D&D or whatever because
Seems to be what happens to most people these days, unfortunately.
yeah, try not to
Yeah.
be that person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And find the fun in it. If you're not having fun, change what you're doing. Write an adventure instead of a subclass. Write a supplement for Quest RPG instead of D&D. Switch things up, change things up, and if that doesn't work,
Find a
then
yeah, find a new community to bounce ideas off of. Brainstorm, find something. Figure it out.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, Steve, thank you so much for being on the show. It was a pleasure. You got a lot of great knowledge to share, so appreciate you coming on and doing that.
Thank you.
And let's see. Let me see if I can remember to get my calendar correctly this time. Got some more exciting guests coming up. Let's see. Next week we'll have Richard Milena, and then we've got both Sheldon, Andy Dips, Alex Clippinger, and the rest of the people that I haven't added to my Google Calendar, so it's like they don't exist yet. But I'll get you there. So stay tuned for that. Most of those will be live. Hopefully, April is less busy than March was, but you know how it goes. But that that is it for this episode of the Designer's Den. Until next time, everyone. Bye.